sunshine, we shine together. Told you I'll be here forever. Said I'll always be your friend. Took an oath that I'm stick it out till the end. Now that it's raining more than ever. No.
Hey guys, you're welcome back to my channel today. Thank you so much for stopping by. In my previous video, we drafted out a pattern for this Victorian corset dress. So if you've not seen the pattern drafting tutorial, I'm going to leave the link in the comment section. Go ahead and watch it before you come join us on this particular one. It's going to help you understand better. So I went ahead to use my pattern paper to cut on my fabric, and I added 0.75 inches on all sides of this fabric because I'll be using the fabric to create a channel for my boning to pass through. I'm going to explain that in details later. So I have both the front and the back on my work table. I'm going to keep the back aside and we are going to work on the front. So these are all the pieces that we'll be needing for the front. Like I said, I added allowance all the way around. I did not add allowance to the base because I already did that on my pattern paper. So we are going to start with the center front one. For the center front one, I did not cut it on fold. I cut out two pieces for the main piece and two pieces for the lining. And what I'm doing right now is marking the 0.75 inches, which is my allowance. Okay, I went ahead to mark that. I have two pieces for the main piece and two pieces for the lining. So you can go ahead and cut yours on fold if you want. What I'll do is to go ahead and sew on a straight line and I'll iron it flat. So I've gone ahead to join the center front one, and I did the same thing for the lining. For the lining piece, guys, I went ahead to iron paper stay to it to strengthen my fabric. Next one is to bring the center front two, and I'm going to open it up like this. I have two main piece and two lining piece also. So everything you're going to be cutting now should be in twos. Okay, so two center front one, two center front two, two side front one, and two side front two. And this is the lining. I iron paper stay to it. So I'm going to place center front two side by side with the center front one, and I'm going to place them right sides facing each other like this, and I'll go ahead and mark the 0.75 inches. Okay, after marking, I'll go ahead and sew. I'll repeat the same thing for the lining piece. So guys, I've gone ahead to sew center front two to center front one, and this is what it looks like. Okay, I hope you guys are not confused. I repeated the same thing for the lining, and this is what I have. The next thing I'll do is to bring the side front one, and I'm going to open it up. I also have two pieces for this. Okay, two for the main piece, two for the lining. I'm going to place them side by side just like you see me doing. After doing that, I'll still measure the 0.75 inches, which is my allowance. I'm doing this so that I'll sew exactly what I have as my allowance. Okay, I'll go ahead and also pin my lining piece just like this, and I'll sew the 0.75 inches in. After sewing, guys, this is what I have. Okay, you can see my allowance inside, and I also repeated the same thing for the lining piece. After doing that, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to bring my side front two, and then I'm going to place them side by side just like I've been doing. For the side front two, I also have two main piece and two lining piece, so I'm going to place them on each other, and I will sew on the 0.75 inches, which is my allowance. Okay, so in order not to get confused, go ahead and notch where you have to notch. You know, we are working with too many fabrics, so notch where you have to. You can notch the base so you know where the base is, and when sewing, make sure you are following the shape that you have on your fabric. Is very important. So guys, after joining all the front pieces together, this is what I have, and this is what it looks like on the inside. So everything you do for the main piece, go ahead and do it for the lining piece. what I'm going to do is to fold all these allowance down just like you see me doing. First of all, iron it down and then go ahead and sew on a straight line to create your boning casing. Okay, so whatever you are sewing in, make sure it is wide enough for your boning to pass through. So just fold it down, iron and sew on a straight line. After sewing mine, this is what it looks like on the inside and this is what we have on the outside. So the next thing we are going to do is to work on the yoke. For the yoke, I went ahead to use this skin tone net and I cut out 2 pieces because I'll be using one as the lining. So what I'll do is to go ahead and sew the neckline and the side to hold it down. After sewing, go ahead and iron. I'll bring in the other side of the yoke and I also went ahead to cut out 2 pieces for the lining and 2 pieces for the main fabric. So just look at the way I'm going to place it side by side with the yoke. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and place this on the yoke just like you see me doing, and I'm going to arrange it properly. Just arrange it, make sure everything is sitting together, and I'm going to place the lining underneath this. Okay, so I placed the right side of the fabric on the right side of this yoke and I placed the right side of the lining on the right. So when I open it up, both wrong sides of the black fabric is going to be facing each other. I don't know how else to explain, but then I went ahead to sew on a straight line and I ironed my fabric in place. After doing that, this is what I have, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and bring back the front bodies and I'm going to place the yoke on the upper area of these front bodies. So since I already know my center front for the front bodies, I'm just going to chalk it down and I'm going to fold this yoke into 2 just like you see me doing, and I'll use my chalk to mark the midpoint. After marking it, I'm going to place the middle point of the yoke to the middle point of the main bodies, and then I'm going to pin all the way around and I will sew with the 1/2 inch, which is my allowance. Remember, I left 1/2 inch on the base of the yoke. I also left 1/2 inch on the upper side of the main bodies. So I'll go ahead and sew on a straight line. After sewing, guys, this is what I have. Okay, you can see that our dress is already taking shape. Guys, next thing I did was to iron the seam allowance of the lining piece. I ironed everything flat. So what I'll do is to place the lining piece like this on the main piece, right sides facing right sides, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and sew using the 1/2 inch allowance. After sewing, I'll turn it over. I'll also sew the sides in place and then I'll iron. So this is what it's going to look like when I'm done sewing. So I'm going to sew this and I'll keep it aside. So guys, we'll go ahead and work on the back. So the same thing we did for the front is what we're going to do for the back. I also went ahead to add 0.75 inches all around this pattern paper because we'll be creating channels for our boning for the back also. And for each of the back piece, I went ahead to cut out 2 main piece and 2 lining piece. So what I'm doing right now is arranging my fabric. So like I said before, notch, especially this back piece, go ahead and notch where you have to notch so you don't get confused. And you can see that I'm sewing both my lining piece and my main piece because I don't want any form of confusion. So what I'm doing is arranging. I took 1 center back 1, 1 center back 2 and 1 center back 3 and I placed them side by side so you can see what I have on my work table. So what I'm going to do is to arrange the other part of the back. So this is my side back 1. I'm going to take center back 2, as you can see, and you can see that this back piece, they all look alike. So be very careful as you are joining your main piece, be joining your lining piece in order to avoid any form of confusion. So after arranging all my pieces in place, just like you can see me doing, I'm going to place them right sides facing right side and I'm going to mark my 0.75 inches, which is my allowance. I'll mark on all sides and I'll go ahead and sew. So as I'm doing this, I'm also going to repeat the same thing for my lining piece. I'm going to place them the way I placed this main piece and then I'm going to mark my 0.75 inches, and then I'll go ahead and sew. In case you are still confused, just look at the way I am arranging the lining piece. So guys, after sewing the back piece in place, this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to do is to iron the seam allowance down, and then I'm going to sew on a straight line for my boning casing. I'll repeat the same thing for the other side. I've also gone ahead to do the same thing for the lining piece. For the allowance of the lining piece, I'll open it up like this and I'll iron it down. So for the yoke of the back, guys, you can see that I added half an inch allowance all the way around except the armhole area, and I have two main piece and two lining piece. What I'm going to do is open them up like this. This is what it's going to look like. I also went ahead to iron paper stay to the lining piece. What I'm going to do is to place them right sides facing right sides, just like you see me doing, and then I'll go ahead and sew the neckline and the opening at the back. That is all I will sew. I'll also add loop to one side of the neckline. So guys, after sewing, I went ahead to turn it inside out, and this is what I have. I've also gone ahead to create channel for my boning for the back piece. So I'm going to place them side by side. Like I mentioned earlier, I'll be adding loop to the back of my own dress. If you are using an eyelet, you can go ahead and do that. So what I did was to go ahead and cut out this piece of fabric that I'll be using for my loop. The length of this fabric is 2.5 inches. What I did was to cut out a long strip of fabric. I sewed it and I turned it inside out. What I'll do now is to determine how opened I want the back to be. So from the upper area, because I'll still join my lining to the main piece, I'll go down by half an inch and I'll mark that. Okay, this half an inch is what I'll use to turn my lining and the main fabric. From the half an inch, I'll go ahead and I'll start marking 1 inch at different intervals. So I just marked 1 inch apart. After doing that, on the base, I'll also leave like 1 inch or half an inch, okay, because I'll be joining the base to the skirt part of this dress. I hope you understand. So I'll head over to my sewing machine and I'll sew the loop just like this. I'll sew it on all the lines that I made. After doing that, guys, this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to do is to bring in my lining piece, and I'm going to place the lining piece on my fabric right sides facing each other. But before I pin the lining, I'm going to go ahead and bring back my yoke. I'll place my yoke inside the main fabric and I'll pin it down just like you see me doing. After doing that, I'll cover it up with my lining piece and I'll go ahead and sew using the half an inch that I left on the upper side. I'll also close the loop area. Okay, after doing that, I'll iron and turn it inside out. So I've gone ahead to sew the loop in place, and this is what I have, guys. So guys, after sewing the lining and the main piece for the front, this is what it looks like. I'll go ahead and bring in my back piece. So go ahead and trim off all the excess fabric that you have on the base of your fabric. I'll go ahead and join the shoulders of the front and the back together, and for the sides I'll go ahead and take in my stitching allowance, which is 2 inches. After doing that, I'll turn it inside out. So guys, I've gone ahead to join the front and the back piece together, and you can see that the length is the same. So the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and cut out my sleeves. What I'll do is to go ahead and open up the armhole area because I used a gather stitch to hold the armhole area. So this is the fabric for my sleeves. I went ahead to fold it into 4 because I want to cut the two sleeves together. What I'll do, on the opened edge of my fabric, I'll come inward by like this by 3 inches, and on this part of the sleeves I'll go down by 5 inches. I'll indicate all these points. What I'll do is to use my free hand to connect from the 3 inches like this to meet the 5 inches, just like this. What I'll do next is to go down and place my tape and then I'll take my round sleeve circumference divided by 2. I'll place that and I'll add 1 inch to that measurement for stitching allowance. I'll connect from there, and on this part I'm going to place my tape like this, and I'll take my round armhole circumference divided by 2. Mine is 8 inches. I'll go ahead and add about 1.5 inches to that measurement for my stitching allowance. So what I have on my work table is enough. On the base of the sleeves, I'm going to take my round wrist circumference divided by 2, and I'll also add 1 inch to that measurement for my stitching allowance. After doing that, I'll use my ruler to connect all these points like this. After doing that, I'll go ahead and cut. After cutting, guys, this is what I have. I'll go ahead and stitch the sleeves to my upper bodies. So guys, this is my skirt part. What I'm going to do is to open it up like this. This is the front. I'm going to place the back on the front, right sides facing each other. I went ahead to iron my zipper allowance flat. Okay, so go ahead and iron your zipper allowance so you know where to fix your zip. After placing them on each other, what I'm going to do is to place my measurements, my waist measurement on the waist, my hip measurement on the hip, and then I'm going to sew all the way down. After doing that, I'm also going to go ahead and join this zipper allowance side, and I'll leave my slits. Okay, so guys, this is the front part. I've gone ahead to fix my sleeves in place, and this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to do is to pass my boning through all the channels that I've already created. So what you're going to do is to measure all the channels and cut out your boning. So make sure your boning is about 1 inch shorter than the length of your upper bodies, okay, because you're still going to join your skirt to this part. So I'm going to go ahead and fix the boning inside all these channels, including the back channels. So guys, after fixing my boning, I'll go ahead and iron it flat because it's going to stand. This is not a sewable boning. After ironing, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the middle point of the upper bodies. I'll use my chalk to mark it. I've already gone ahead to sew my skirt in place, and I left my zipper allowance open. Still folding the zipper allowance, I'm going to go ahead and mark the middle point of my skirt, and I'm going to go ahead and place this middle point that I've just marked. I'll place it on the middle point of the upper bodies. So just look at what I'm doing. I'm going to place them like this, right sides facing right side. I'll pin all the way around, and I'll go ahead and sew using my 1/2 inch allowance. So don't sew on the zipper allowance, leave the zipper allowance because we'll be attaching our zip soon. So after sewing all the way around, guys, this is what I have. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and weave inside. I'll overlock it all the way around, and then I'm going to fix my zipper in place. So if you're not sewing a lining piece to your skirt just like mine, make sure you overlock before you attach your zipper, okay, so that you have a neat finishing. Okay, so after overlocking, I'll go ahead and fix my zip. I also went ahead to cut out a long strip of fabric that I'll be using to lace my loop. The length should be as long as you want it. After doing that, I'll hem the base of my dress, and yeah, that is all for this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, leave your questions in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next one.